Michael Landon was pleaded with by Melissa Gilbert to alter the Little House on the Prairie scripts. Nevertheless, America desired romance, and she was compelled to provide it. She had never been kissed before she was 15 years old. It was wrong, Dean Butler understood at the age of 23. Yet, with 100 crew members looking on, they shot scene after scene. Crying, her mother stood in the darkness. Many viewers expressed their displeasure in critical correspondence. At long last, the two celebrities have spoken out about what everyone knew but dared not mention before. Nobody saw the dark side of their on-screen romance coming. Before Melissa Gilbert was even a name, her life was shattered. She entered this world in Los Angeles on May 8, 1964. In addition to their 3 children from previous marriages, her biological parents, David Darlington and Kathy Wood, were recently engaged. They placed her for adoption the very next day after she was born. Having a 7th kid would be financially too much for them, they claimed. Melissa was never one of their overnight guests. Actor Paul Gilbert and comedian Barbara Crane adopted her right away. Barbara is also a dancer and actress. She would never get over that sudden breakup. A significant portion of my life has been a delusion, she admitted in Prairie Tale, her later novel. As a father, Paul Gilbert was more than that. She lived for him. However, everything changed on February 13, 1976. Melissa learned of her father's death from a stroke when she was just 11 years old. It was clear. He was no stranger to such pain. But the reality was considerably more agonizing. A suicide had been committed by Paul Gilbert. Nobody informed her for many years. He flew fighter planes throughout World War II, enduring excruciating agony on a daily basis as a result of his injuries. Even with the care of the Veterans Administration, he was unable to cope. When Melissa finally learned the truth at the age of 44, it devastated her. For weeks, she was scarcely able to function, she told Oprah. In the end, she decided to engage a private investigator to find out the truth. Some answers were required of her. Her only savior from the clutches of rejection had vanished without a trace, and she had to figure out why. Because nobody had ever been honest with her. The entertainment industry was always a part of Melissa's family, despite her adoption. Barbara Crane, who raised her adopted daughter, was the daughter of Harry Crane, who co-created The Honeymooners and contributed to the concept of celebrity roasts that helped revitalize the Dean Martin show. Even the Golden Globes, the Emmys, and the Oscars had hired Harry to write for them. His legacy as a pioneer in television had a profound impact on Melissa's upbringing. Even Barbara had her own successful acting career. That meant that Melissa grew up in a household where she had easy access to televisions, screenplays, and red carpets. She used them every day. Everyone in the family felt the pulse of the entertainment industry. Jonathan Gilbert was the second child that Paul and Barbara adopted in 1967. After Barbara married attorney Harold Abel Lies in 1975, they had a daughter, Sarah. Melissa, Jonathan, and Sarah, all 3 of them, became famous on television. Melissa worked her way to stardom. She didn't merely stumble into it. She began appearing in ads before the age of 5. Her 1977 appearance alongside Lorne Greene in an Alpo dog food commercial was one of her most well-known. Gilbert and Greene hit it off right away, and the commercial showcased her ecstatic celebration of her dog Fluffy's blue ribbon triumph. Melissa Gilbert had a life-altering part when she was 9 years old, after competing with 500 other hopeful girls in a casting room. In the beginning of 1973, NBC was looking for the ideal young actress to portray Laura Ingalls in a pilot episode. Something occurred when Melissa entered the room and started the screen test with Michael Landon. A youthful actress wasn't all he saw. He beheld his virtual daughter. He went on to say that her performance had a certain enchantment. She wasn't pretending. Her name was Laura. It was at the Burbank studios that her life took a dramatic turn. What makes it funny? Exactly who was Landon was a mystery to Melissa. Even though he had been a TV celebrity for 14 years running on Bonanza, she had never watched the show. She didn't try to impress him with her nervousness or compliments throughout her audition. She only acted out the scene. That candor, that unvarnishedness, found precisely what Landon was looking for. He was not a celebrity in her eyes. She thought of him as Pa, and their natural chemistry would drive the plot of Little House on the Prairie for the subsequent 9 seasons. Everything about Melissa's discovery of her casting felt like a scene from a television drama. As she was going about her day at school, a fellow student named Leslie Landon approached her beaming. According to Leslie, who is actually Michael Landon's daughter, "My dad picked you without a studio announcement or phone call, just two girls in a school corridor." It wouldn't be long before those two girls would return to the set. During the show's last seasons, Leslie played the role of teacher Etta Plum. In the picturesque California hills during the summer of 1973, Melissa filmed the pilot. More than 17 million people tuned in when it aired in March of that year. Quite a feat still, she was kept in the dark for almost a year following that success about whether or not the program would be renewed for a full season. Waiting like that can seem like an eternity to a child. Production on Little House on the Prairie resumed in June 1974, marking the show's official birth. 9 complete seasons of family, struggle, and life on the frontier would run until 1983. Her destiny was sealed in an instant. She was required to perform a scene in which Laura bids farewell to her puppy at her last audition. Challenges arose. Tears of real emotion. Serious discomfort. Towards the end, Landon's eyes welled up with tears as he watched intently. She had an effect on him that few actors, even adults, could match. Neither was it training. Technique was lacking. It conveyed genuine, heartfelt sincerity. The day she played Laura Ingalls, he realized she was doing more than that. Unmasked, she was her. Between the ages of 10 and 19, Melissa wasn't merely portraying a role. As she grew up, she was on display for the whole nation to see. More than 20 million people watched each episode of the show when it was at its peak. She was there in America's living room on a weekly basis. On camera, millions of people witnessed her as she lost her baby teeth, grew taller, and entered adolescence. No kid in recorded history had ever been subjected to so intense surveillance for so long. There was more to it than meets the eye. Episode by episode, a national event unfolded. Melissa spent the early hours of the day preparing her camera and memorizing lines, while her classmates rode bikes or did homework. Still, classes continued. She gained her education on the job rather than in a classroom. In order to comply with state education standards, tutors would provide brief, targeted lectures while jumping in and out of takes. While it was not easy, it was successful. They were a close-knit group of adolescents who were both students and actors, and she was no exception. Melissa managed to take on parts that demonstrated she wasn't a one-hit wonder despite her hectic schedule. She played the role of Helen Keller in 1979's The Miracle Worker, and she was just 15 years old. It was so moving that it nominated her for an Emmy. Another tragic role came her way a year later, this time as in Frank. Not one, but 2 nominations. This wasn't a case of charming child parts. She flawlessly portrayed these challenging youths while continuing filming Little House on the Prairie. Unleashing her inner Laura Ingalls is the most incredible aspect of Melissa's story, not her celebrity or prizes. There was more to the persona than what appeared on film. Melissa absorbed Laura's principles, hardships, and resilience. Little House wasn't merely a job, she stated. She had spent her entire life there, from childhood to family. There was a blurring of lines between her real and fictional selves at the end of the episode. Growing up, she looked up to the character. Dean Butler was 23 years old when he was cast as Almanzo Wilder in Little House on the Prairie Season 6. At the age of 15, Melissa Gilbert played Laura Ingalls. In 2019, the 8-year gap would hardly register, but in 1979, it felt like a mountain. The Grand Canyon of age divides was even what Dean had to say about it. This combination caused some confusion, both among viewers and cast members, for a show that advertised itself as family-friendly and aired during Family Hour. Up until that point, Melissa had not yet graduated from high school. Dean dropped out of university. Still, millions of people were expecting them to play sweethearts and have passionate scenes, emotional intimacy, and a first kiss on film. Tension and pain were never truly alleviated because of that producer decision. Melissa was quite upfront about her emotions. Her feelings burst forth the moment she learned Dean had been cast. A perfect mix of nausea, fury, anxiety, and disappointment was what she termed it. She had fantasized about playing opposite an actress about her own age. Someone who connected with the adolescent experience. A man with stubble, was instead brought in. A guy who would normally be kissed by her. However, that went beyond mere acting. It solidified. Laura experiences her first kiss in the episode Sweet 16. Melissa also did it. It was more than just her first kiss captured on film. This was her very first kiss. She had no background, no dates, and was unprepared for it. Merely a film crew. Cameras rolling, almost 100 people staring. Dean Butler knew it was awkward, he said. He came clean about how anxious he was later on. He claimed she was only a little girl. Doing so was really challenging. He was well aware that such casting would never be accepted in modern Hollywood. Immediately, it would be turned down. It occurred, though, at that time. It also went down in history as one of the show's most talked about moments. The off-screen events only added to the difficulty. Barbara Abelise, Melissa's mom, stood behind the cameras and watched. Barb cried down in tears as her daughter leaned in for the kiss. Embrace the present with humility. One that hurt a lot. Instead of growing up quietly, her daughter was growing up on camera with an adult guy for ratings. Dean recalled it with precision. In his memoir Prairie Man, published later in life, he revealed that Barbara had always been against the notion of him being cast. She went from disapproving to devastated when the kiss occurred. He claimed she couldn't stand to see me kiss her daughter. At the same time, Melissa was making every effort to evade it. The show's creator, Michael Landon, was pleaded with by her to switch scenes. Why can't we just embrace? Asking would be her desperate attempt to remain in her safe space. Unfortunately, the scripts continued to pour in. Repetition of scenes, followed by kisses. No matter how sick she was, how afraid she was, or how much love she had never had in real life, she had to act the part. The audience could tell. It was a hit with some readers. Some were appalled. The casting director should be burnt at the stake for coupling a teenage girl with an adult male, according to one mother's letter to the newspaper. Letters were also sent to Dean Butler. A number of viewers expressed anxiety after seeing those scenes. They were correct, too. According to a 1979 article, it was said to be the season's most challenging job. For reasons unrelated to the lines, yet grounded in fact. Among the 1979 AD TV season's roles, Dean Butler's might be the most challenging. A grown man's affection for a girl in her adolescent years is perfectly acceptable, he must persuade the audience. There was a lot of pushback, yet the episode still went viral. There were 2 primetime airings of Sweet 16 that summer, and it topped the ratings according to Nielsen. That became a symbol. Even years later, they would be honored with a trophy for the most iconic kiss in television history by TV Land. However, how much did it cost? An profession that prioritized ratings over all else, a mother who was left to cry in the shadows, an actor who experienced intense discomfort, and a girl who was forced into adult feelings at the age of 15. Dean later stated that he was simply unable to do it today. That's correct. The world has evolved. Things are different now. The industry's attitude toward young performers has also, luckily, changed. That shift, however, occurred far too late for Melissa Gilbert. An unwritten script molded her formative years. Melissa Gilbert's life appeared flawless on television. On the other hand, chaos was brewing behind the scenes. Melissa was subtly succumbing to addiction as millions of viewers watched her portray Laura Ingalls on Little House on the Prairie. During her teenage years, it began and rapidly worsened. As an adult, she regularly drank 2 entire bottles of wine. That was no light drinking, it was a matter of survival, and she came dangerously close to losing her life. After having dinner guests over one night, she experienced a blackout and fell asleep in her dog's bed. At that point, she understood she couldn't sustain this way of life any longer. On the other hand, she had other ways to flee. Along with cocaine, she was using it. She felt isolated due to her fame and the relentless scrutiny she endured as a child star. Although the medications provided temporary relief, the impact of her struggles was evident in every aspect of her life. Each of her relationships took a hit. She was a terrible parent. At last, her own kid, in a devastating moment, pleaded with her to put down the alcohol. She had never been hit so deeply by a plea before. It was the alarm that she just couldn't turn off. A day later, she became a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. She found solace in the 12-step program. She finally felt a sense of belonging as she sat through those meetings and listened to others' experiences of darkness. Prairie Tale, her memoir published in 2009, was an honest look at her struggles with substance abuse, broken relationships, and the emotional scars from growing up in the limelight. But that wasn't the end of the trauma. Melissa tried out for a part in Oliver Stone's The Doors in the early 90s. For years, she was plagued by what happened next. Gilbert claims that Stone sought vengeance. There was a time when she openly criticized him. Then he set her up during the audition. He professed to have composed a sequence specifically for her and then gave it to her. That scene didn't exist. There was a trap. The drawings were really detailed. In order to repeat the words, she had to kneel down. "Just do me, darling." She was ashamed. With icy expressions on his face, Stone responded, "Good," as she cried out. "Doing so will improve it." She was left alone with Stone and another actor after the casting director had vanishing without a trace. Her tears streamed down her face as she bolted off. What she still thinks now is that it was all a punishment. Gilbert refused to back down, although Stone later denied it. After that, she wed Bo Brinkman. It appeared to be a Hollywood romance at first glance, but the couple was engaged and doomed to a tragic end just 6 weeks after meeting. He was emotionally violent, drunk all the time, and disloyal. Slowly but surely, their 6-year marriage came to an end. When it came to cheating, Brinkman was absolutely shameless. Allegedly having an affair with Melissa's former Little House co-star Shannon Doherty was one of his darkest betrayals. Doherty used to think of her as a big sister figure. She had now integrated herself into her anguish. Shannon was just 19 years old when this happened. Circa 40 was Brinkman's age. When asked what she would say to Doherty again, years later, Melissa hesitated not at all. "I wouldn't say anything," she said. "I'd just punch her in the nose." But that betrayal was nothing compared to what came next. Just 2 months after Melissa had a C-section and gave birth to their son, Dakota, she was woken by his cries. She went downstairs to warm a bottle. What she found in the living room nearly broke her. Her husband was on the couch, having sex with another woman. The TV cast a dim light over the scene. For a second she thought it had to be a dream, but it wasn't. When she stood there in shock, he looked at her and said, "What are you looking at?" No guilt, no apology, just arrogance. She didn't scream, she didn't cry. She walked to the fridge, got the milk, warmed it, and went back upstairs to feed their baby. While her husband continued cheating on her right there on their couch, the woman turned out to be a sex worker. Brinkman had found her through the Robin Bird Show, a late-night sex program. Later, when Melissa confronted him, he blamed her. He said it was her fault for not being sexually available after surgery. That wasn't the end of it. After the woman left, Brinkman came upstairs in a rage. "What's your problem?" he shouted. When she tried to keep things quiet for their newborn, he pushed for a fight. When she told him she couldn't believe he'd brought a hooker into their home, he replied, "Yeah, what's your problem?" He didn't stop there. He called her selfish, blamed her for his stalled career, and punished her emotionally. When she told her mother about her pregnancy, before telling him because he was unreachable, he gave her the silent treatment for 3 days. He missed their baby shower entirely because he had gone on a drinking bin. Melissa Gilbert's life didn't just evolve. It took sharp turns, bold leaps, and surprising falls. But through it all, her story stayed deeply human. At 48, after 2 failed marriages and decades in the spotlight, she found something unexpected. Real love. His name was Timothy Busfield. They had known each other for over 20 years, crossing paths on sets and industry events, but never as more than colleagues. That changed in late 2012. Over the holidays, they got engaged. By April 24, 2013, they were married in a quiet, romantic ceremony at the San Isidro Ranch in Santa Barbara. She wore red, not white, a bold strapless gown by Morgan Le Fay. At the time, Gilbert had 2 sons. Busfield had 3 children of his own. They weren't starting fresh. They were blending lives. But this time, Gilbert felt different. Busfield gave her something she hadn't had before, a true partnership. Someone who believed in her. Someone who pushed her forward. In 2018, they moved to upstate New York, far from the chaos of Hollywood. They now live and work side by side. "My favorite thing in the world is working together," she said. But before finding peace, Gilbert dove into the storm. In 2000, she was elected to the Screen Actors Guild Board of Directors. Just 1 year later, she stunned everyone by becoming the 3rd woman ever elected president of SAG. The election was brutal. Her opponent was Valerie Harper. Out of 27,630 votes, Gilbert won 12,080. Harper got 10,692. That's 45.3% to 39.4%. Hollywood insiders were shocked. The union had been divided under previous president William Daniels, whose leadership led to the longest strike in Hollywood history. 6 months against advertisers in 2000. Gilbert promised to fix the chaos, and she did. In March 2002, she won again. This time, she got 21,351 votes out of 37,742, over 50%. Ballot returns hit a record high of 41.4%. During her presidency from 2001 to 2005, she met with governors, mayors, and senators. She pushed hard for performers' rights. In December 2001, she became vice president of the AFL-CIO. Suddenly, the woman who once played Laura Ingalls was one of the most powerful labor leaders in America. Then, just when people thought they had her figured out, she shocked them again. On August 10, 2015, at age 51, Gilbert announced she was running for Congress. Not in California, not in New York, but in Michigan's 8th District. A Republican stronghold. She had only moved there 2 years earlier. The backlash was instant. Her opponent's team called her a tax cheat. They revealed she owed $360,000 in federal taxes and $112,000 to the state of California. That's nearly $500,000 in unpaid taxes. She admitted it, blamed a mix of career stalls, recession fallout, and divorce. She was on a payment plan. The campaign went on until May 24, 2016. That's when she suddenly withdrew, not because of politics, but because of pain. In 2012, while competing on Dancing with the Stars, she had suffered a concussion and whiplash from a fall. Later, a balcony collapsed at her Studio City home. The injuries never fully healed. Doctors told her she needed surgery for 2 herniated discs. Her right hand had gone numb. Her arm shot with pain. Her neck throbbed. With no other Democrat on the ballot, her exit handed the win to her Republican opponent. The race was over, but her fight wasn't. Even after stepping away from Congress, Gilbert kept pushing for change. In 2002, she joined a White House event hosted by First Lady Laura Bush, promoting literacy across America. Behind the scenes, she also met with White House staff about runaway production and copyright issues. Huge problems for American film workers. She chaired key SAG committees on affirmative action and young performers' rights. She stood for diversity. She stood for child actors. And when politics got heated, she took a side. During her 2016 campaign, she loudly supported Planned Parenthood. She tweeted with Idrich's Stand with Pages. She joined Walk for Choice events. It wasn't just a political stand. She and her brother had both been adopted. Her pro-choice stance wasn't just a slogan. It was personal. In 2014, even before running, she campaigned for Michigan gubernatorial candidate Mark Schauer. Her loyalty to Democratic causes ran deep, but her most lasting public moment came much earlier, when she was just 21 years old. In 1985, Melissa Gilbert became the youngest person ever to receive a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. It's at 6,429 Hollywood Boulevard, a permanent reminder that this wasn't just a child star. She had already produced the Emmy-winning The Miracle Worker in 1979. She'd done over 30 commercials by age 2. Crest, McDonald's, Geff Toys, with Henry Fonda no less. And in 1987, just 2 years after receiving her star, she made her off-Broadway debut in A Shayna Medal. She won the Outer Critics Circle Award for Best Debuting Actress. Melissa Gilbert was 50 years old in January 2015 when she made a bold decision. She had her breast implants removed. It wasn't just a health choice, it was a personal rebellion. For years, Hollywood had told her how she should look. The implants came after a divorce. When she started dating again, the surgery had gone well and everything seemed fine at first. But over time, she grew uncomfortable. She said it plainly. She didn't like how they looked or felt. She even joked about how taking a Zumba class might give her 2 black eyes. But the real reason ran deeper. She was thinking about the future. What if she was 80 years old and needed a hip replacement, but also had to replace breast implants. She realized they had a shelf life. So she said no, she removed them. And with that, she took back control of her body. But the road to that decision wasn't easy. In 2012, at 48, she joined Dancing with the Stars. And that's when the pressure to look young hit its peak. She admitted it was the height of Botox, fillers, spray tans, hair extensions, and breast implants. It wasn't really her. Looking back, she said she felt like a cartoon, literally comparing herself to Carrot Top. Botox gave her sharp, pointy eyebrows. She couldn't show emotion. Her face was frozen. Still, she kept chasing youth. She feared aging out of the roles. She wanted to stay the young ingenue, even though she knew it was impossible.